You think people turn against you because you did something wrong. Sometimes that's true, but more often the reason is quieter and stranger. You have begun refusing to be the container for someone else's wound. When you stop explaining, rescuing, or absorbing another person's shame, their fear will look like anger toward you. Listen closely. One counterintuitive boundary sentence I will give you and show you how to use later in the video will change how others test you. Stay with me. This shift is small, ordinary, and it will reorder your world. People don't always turn away because of you. They turn away because you stop holding their shadows. You may not realize it yet, but a very particular, recurring dream is one of the gentlest signs that real healing is underway. In this dream, you find a mirror in a night forest that does not flatter you or condemn you. It only shows the pieces of yourself you have not yet claimed. Or you stand at the edge of a sea that glows from within, lit not by the moon, but by something waking under the surface. These images are not literal instructions. They are a language your psyche uses to say that projection is loosening, that you are waking up to who truly owns certain feelings. When you keep seeing that mirror or the glowing sea, notice whether you wake with less story and more sensation, less need to explain or repair someone else's anger, more curiosity about what lives inside you. Hold that observation lightly for now. I will unpack these dream signs and what they mean for your boundaries later in the video between 9:30 and 11 minutes. For the next few nights, keep a small notebook by your bed and write the image down. Ask yourself, did the mirror show something I have been denying? Did the sea ask me to stop carrying heat that is not mine? When did you last dream of a mirror, forest, or sea? What did the image ask of you? A recurring mirror or sea dream often marks the moment projections are unhooking. Steady pacing. I will tell you the exact, ordinary moment when the mask that has held power over your life finally loses its hold. Right now, you may be waiting for a dramatic reveal, but the truth is quieter. The moment is not a confrontation or a public unmasking. It is the small, steady action you take when you refuse to carry someone else's shame. It happens when, in the middle of an old pattern, you breathe, name what is happening, and step back without explanation or plea. You do not escalate, you do not justify, and you do not apologize for withdrawing your emotional labor. You say a simple line, and you mean it. You stop cleaning up what was not spilled on you. That tiny act collapses the ritual that once required you to explain, soothe, or fix. And in its place, a new economy of responsibility forms. Expect resistance, tests, and louder storms, but notice how the scene shifts when you stand your ground calmly. Hold this promise with curiosity. I will show you examples and the exact phrasing to use between 6 and 8 minutes into the video. What recurring behaviors do you find yourself explaining away? When do you feel drained after being with someone? You're asking the right question. When will the mask no longer control how you feel? You arrive at a night so ordinary, it feels like a punishment. The Negredo, the black stage where everything that once made you feel needed and necessary turns to ash. In this darkness, your old empathy looks naive because it was never asked for. It was assumed. You have been the container, the quiet cleaner of other people's storms, and now the cleaning feels endless and empty. The world narrows to the ritual of rushing, explaining, smoothing, and then waking up exhausted, as if your life were stitched to someone else's anger. Imagine Persephone at the pomegranate tree, standing with one foot in spring and one foot in the underworld, forced to choose between familiar rescue and a hunger for something truer. Negredo is that hunger made visible. It strips you until you can no longer confuse motion for meaning. In this stage, you will feel loss, confusion, and a strange loneliness that is actually initiation. This is not failure. This is compost. The ash reveals the shape of what must be sifted out so new alloy can form. Hold the discomfort like a lantern and watch what refuses to burn with you. What happens next decides whether you become stone or gold. What happens next decides whether you become stone or gold. Negredo strips you. It shows what's been fueling your old empathy. When the old identity begins to dissolve, it doesn't happen with fireworks or grand revelations. It's quiet, almost imperceptible at first. The things that used to define you start to slip through your fingers. The roles, the masks, the stories you've repeated to yourself for years, they begin to feel hollow. You notice yourself reacting differently to the same situations, almost like watching someone else's life. There's confusion, yes, but also an unexpected lightness, as if a weight you didn't know you carried is melting away. You stop trying to fix, control, or understand everything. Instead, you start to simply witness. This is the moment when the pattern breaks, not by force, but by surrender. What used to feel like an endless loop begins to unravel. The ego, realizing its old tricks no longer work, grows silent. In this stillness, something new begins to form, not an identity, but a presence. You begin to sense the vastness beneath the surface, the part of you that doesn't need a mask at all. Where do you feel compelled to fix? What would happen if you paused for one breath before acting? Dissolving is an act of compassionate restraint. You pause to see what's actually yours. And then, almost without realizing it, the mask finally loses its power. It doesn't shatter dramatically. It simply becomes irrelevant. You see it for what it really is, a tool you once needed to survive, to be accepted, to make sense of the world. But now, standing in your own truth, you realize you no longer need it. The approval you once chased feels meaningless. The fear that used to control you fades like mist under sunlight. What remains is raw, unfiltered authenticity. You're not performing anymore. You're not trying to be understood, admired, or validated. You're simply here, present, awake, and unafraid. The noise inside your head quiets, replaced by a profound stillness. You begin to notice beauty in ordinary moments, depth in silence, strength in vulnerability. This is the moment the promise is fulfilled, the exact point where illusion dissolves and the real self steps forward. The mask doesn't need to be destroyed. It simply falls away, because truth no longer needs a disguise. Like the phoenix, you must allow a small death to rise into a new pattern. The hero's descent becomes the hero's return when you bring back self-possession. The mask loses power when you stop explaining someone else's feelings for them. Now comes the stage of recombination, where the fragments of your old self begin to weave together into something new. The ashes of past patterns, the broken empathy that once left you drained, and the lessons of boundaries you have learned all begin to merge into a coherent whole. You start to feel a subtle shift. Naive compassion transforms into discerning, intentional care. You still feel deeply, but your heart is no longer a sponge for everyone else's chaos. You recognize when to act and when to pause. You notice the wounded healer within, the part of you that has been hurt yet still wants to help, learning to offer care without losing ground. This is the quiet power of individuation, standing fully in yourself while participating in the world. You begin to practice saying no without guilt, to watch your energy and honor your limits. Each small act, each mindful choice is a thread in the tapestry of your emerging self. Slowly, you feel your center solidify, and the old loops that once trapped you start to dissolve into the space you now own. Recombination is not about perfection. It is about presence, clarity, and the steady reclaiming of your own life. When you imagine saying no with compassion, what image arises? How does your body respond? Recombination is training your heart to be both kind and clear. Now it's time to close two of the open loops we've been carrying. First, the recurring dream you have been noticing, the mirror in a night forest, or the sea that glows from within, reveals more than you may have realized. These images are not mere curiosities. They are your psyche signaling that projections are loosening, that the old stories you carried about other people's anger, blame, or shame no longer have the same grip. When you wake from these dreams, pay attention not just to the story, but to the sensations, the subtle shifts in your body, the quiet release of tension that once belonged to someone else. The mirror reflects faces instead of masks, and the glowing sea reminds you that inner light is contained, luminous, and yours alone. Second, the counterintuitive boundary sentence I promised at the very beginning is this: I won't clean up what wasn't spilled on me. Say it calmly, once, and mean it. This sentence does not attack, it does not abandon. It simply declares that your energy, your responsibility, is yours to steward. Practicing it in your daily life begins to collapse old patterns and teaches others to own their feelings. Together, the dream and the sentence form a bridge between awareness and action, between seeing what is true and stepping into it without apology. In these moments, you reclaim the quiet sovereignty of your own presence. Now, you enter the gold stage, the new alchemy, where everything that was dark, fragmented, or heavy transforms into quiet strength and clarity. Gold is not a loud triumph. It is a subtle, steady presence that radiates from within. Your empathy is no longer naive. It is discerning, intentional, and free from the burden of rescuing others at your own expense. You begin to see relationships differently. You participate without overextending. You care without confusing your heart for someone else's map. The wounded healer within you now offers wisdom without losing balance. And like the phoenix, your fire has returned, refined, and intentional. Each act of kindness is chosen, each boundary firmly held without guilt. Gold is the calm confidence that arises from knowing who you are and what you can carry without surrendering yourself. Individuation is no longer a distant concept. It is present in the way you move through the world, in the way you respond instead of react, in the quiet joy of being fully seen by yourself. The old masks, the old stories, the old loops, they are no longer necessary. What remains is the steady glow of a self that is whole, awake, and sovereign, a presence that honors both compassion and clarity. Now, let's bring all of this into practical steps you can take immediately to reinforce the work you've done in your inner world. First, practice the counterintuitive boundary sentence we discussed. I won't clean up what wasn't spilled on me. Say it aloud 3 times today, noticing the way it feels in your body, the subtle shifts in your breath, and the clarity it brings to your interactions. Second, keep a dream journal for at least 2 weeks. Each morning, write down any images of mirrors, forests, seas, or ash that arise. Pay attention to recurring themes, sensations, and how your body reacts upon waking. Third, in moments when someone expects you to explain, fix, or absorb their feelings, pause for one conscious breath. Name what is happening calmly and neutrally, without rushing to justify, soothe, or rescue. Observe the space that opens between stimulus and response. Fourth, reflect on your empathy. Notice the difference between feeling with someone and taking on their emotional load. These exercises are small, yet each one is a rehearsal of sovereignty. Over time, these practices help you reclaim your energy, strengthen boundaries, and deepen your discernment. They turn theory into lived experience, showing you not just who you are, but how to inhabit your life fully, awake and unafraid, while offering care without losing your ground.
As we come to the close, take a moment to reflect on what you've learned and experienced. Comment below with your one-sentence "I am" statement, a small declaration of who you are becoming. Share a dream image you've noticed. Was it a mirror, a glowing sea, or ash? Check the resources in the description for exercises, readings, and practices that support your continued growth. Remember, setting boundaries and honoring your own energy does not take away your compassion. It makes your presence stronger, wiser, and more available to those who truly deserve it. Carry this awareness forward gently, steadily, and with intention.